One of the concerns that I have, and again as an appreciator of history, is sometimes people ask me, well, what about the title of the book? And the title of the book is going to key into those of you who are history buffs. Because one of the most famous history books of all time is The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. And this book is an homage to that book from the standpoint that Gibbons, in his masterwork, covers 400 years of the Roman Empire. And then we had the British Empire, which lasted about 250 years. The American Empire is right about 100 years, basically almost exactly, because our empire became recognized when the United States stepped into World War I and won World War I. And there's a very graphic piece of evidence, and that is if you've been to the Somme battlefield in northern France, the French and English army sat 2 football fields about 600 yards apart, for 2 years, from 1915 to 1917, across from the German army. And there was this no man's land in between. In fact, that's where the phrase came from, was this terrible scorched earth in between the 2 battle lines. Within 6 months of the United States finally joining World War I, we conquered Germany. So the United States unquestionably was a major factor, and that was where the United States began its century of domination as a world power. We reaffirmed that when we woke up on December 7th, 1941 at Pearl Harbor and entered World War II. Unfortunately, we had given a much larger force between the Japanese and the Germans and the Italians, a much bigger head start in World War II, and it was a much greater burden to overcome. In the book, I refer to that as we were playing football, having ceded the first 3/4 of the football game to the other side, and yet we still prevailed, although with an enormous loss of life. And I want to focus on loss of life because I think it's very important. Subsequent to World War II, we were recognized as the world power, and since then we won the Cold War, and we've won the space race. And the question is, what do we do for an encore? And what my suggestion is in the book, and I have 3 chapters of recommendations and analysis after I present a chapter on each of these 17 presidents, is that we need to get our house in order. And I know that doesn't sound as exciting as winning a world war or winning the space race, but it is just as serious for the survival of America and for our quality of life. And so some of the things that we want to emphasize here is since World War II, which officially ended in 1945, America returned to a civilian economy in 1946 under President Truman, we have lost 160,000 troops dead. That does not count the wounded, and we see them in different, you see TV commercials for the Wounded Warrior Project, you see people have lost both legs and our arm and so forth in explosions in Afghanistan and Iraq, and we've had many, many soldiers come back with PTSD as a consultant. A year ago, I worked with 2 different companies, each one dealing with an employee who was having difficulty at work because of PTSD. There's actually a book out called The $5 Billion War that talks about the intervention in Afghanistan and Iraq, and it says, you may call it $1 billion got spent in the fight, but the reality is that when we deal with the health issues, the PTSD, the amputees, over the years that are to come, we will spend far more than the $1 billion that we're being told the war has cost to this point. And I think we need to be very judicious in human life, and I think we need to be very judicious in our resources.